And then here we are. Hi, everybody. It's this is the week six sync. So I think we have two more after this. Actually, Andrew just dropped in a thing in the chat and I realized that it was not on the calendar up until the 5th. So we do have one next week. And then, well, so there's Sam. I will pause while Sam connects because this is actually important stuff that I wanted to get clear before we finish talking.
Hello.
There's Sam. Hey, cool. Great timing because I was just starting to actually talk about real stuff. Cool. So as I was saying, so Andrew dropped in and he said, hey, you guys are missing an entry on the last week. It should be on September 5th. I am leaving it still on the Sunday at 1 o'clock, which is, I believe, what we agreed, earlier to say, like, hey, we're going to keep those at the Sundays. Again, just reminders that if for some reason, I think, was it Tatiana, you'd said you weren't sure about some things and stuff we'll see coming up, just, talk to us. We'll figure out schedule things going along. But otherwise, it's nice to see everybody here. And hopefully everything went well. So let's do real quick. Again, sorry, we're running a little bit behind. So let's check in first. Does anybody have any commentary on the last week? Did everything go okay? Did everything go horribly? Or did y'all, is it kind of, you guys have it figured out now and everything's going super smooth? I'm going to take like sort of semi-blank stares and nodding as like things went well. That was good. There was no deviation from the plan and stuff.
Well, we have retro too, so we can circle back on that.
Yeah.
That'll give you a good chance to get all the ideas.
Great. Yeah. Okay, so we had two stories then. I'll switch over to demo time here. So we had story number 11 was, as a user, I want to be able to delete items. That was Tatiana and Danny. So I will does either one of you want to take over, grab the wheel and start, kind of talking about what you did?
Sure, I can do that. Danny, let me know if you want to. Okay. Let me share my screen here real quick. All right, so our story, the main idea was that a user will be able to delete an item from their shopping list. And one of the asks was that there is a prompt confirming deletion right before it's done. And of course, that the item also be deleted from the database. So I am going to go to our app. I'm going to create a new list here just to make things easier. And I'm going to start adding random items here. Just going to add a couple to demonstrate how the app behaves. Okay. So I added 2 items. Let me go to the list view. So I'm going to click delete button right here, the X button. We see a prompt that comes up and says, are you sure? If I hit cancel, nothing happens. I'm going to refresh just so we can see that this item is still on the list. So now I'll actually delete it. I'll hit OK. We see that it has disappeared. I'll refresh to show that it's gone. And let me double check what my user token is so I can show that it also disappeared from the database. Let me look for this user token. Sorry, we've realized that we added so much stuff to the database that it's hard to find things. All right, here's my user token. Let's take a look at the items. I cannot spell eggs, but that's the only thing that's left here. I can go back to the app and delete these misspelled eggs. I'm gonna hit OK. Back to the database. The bad eggs are gone. Are there any questions?
Looks good.
Are there any challenges you faced when doing this?
So you know what, surprisingly not. And I think the reason why is because a few weeks ago, Danny suggested that we restructure the database and save items under the user tokens. So when we initially set it up, we were kind of just saving out items. It was just like a data dump sort of a situation. And her idea was that why don't we organize them all under their respective user tokens? And I think because we did that a couple of weeks ago, this user story was a lot easier to deal with because I didn't have to go and look for a specific user token. The item was already associated with it, and that made things a lot easier.
Nice, your forethought's paying off.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything code wise we want to look at?
Yeah, we can look at the code. All right, so really all we did, we added, a delete button that just looks like a big X. Here it is. And on click, there's a handle delete method that, sorry, looking for, here it is. Just before anything is deleted, a confirm box pops up asking, are you sure? And if the answer is yes, then we delete. It's really just a delete method on the item.
Cool. And then Danny, you've been Tatiana's done all the talking. She did a good job. Do you have anything else to add?
There were two things I just realized as we were walking through the code that I just want to voice to make sure that we address. So one is that we need to make sure we add an ARIA label to our delete button, because right now it's just an X and we don't have that accessibility measure in place. And then the other thing, as I was realizing, is we currently don't display the user token anywhere. And I think in terms of functionality going into the next couple of weeks, we should probably add something that's like, hey, want someone to join your list? Here's your user token. And like they can join it with this, because no one's going to know to go to local storage and look up a user token, right? So that was just something I was thinking through as we were demoing. But beyond that, it was a really smooth week. I think we hit this point that we were like, was that actually everything? Like, are we done? I guess we're done. So yeah, it was good. That's all I got.
Awesome. And yeah, hang on to those thoughts because we'll have time for some of that nice to have looky stuff coming up. I'm going to let Graham be a lot more articulate when he talks about it later. Okay.
Hey, it's April this time, not me.
For the issue, whatever. One of you
Much
will use better words than I am using today. Okay, so Yolanda, Sam, how'd you guys do with number 12, which was as a user, I want to view my list of shopping list items in order, effectively, sword story.
Yeah, it was good. It was a solid challenge, to be honest. Dealing with dates and dealing with how to sort by purchase date was an interesting task, and we got through it with a couple things here and there, but ultimately it was like a good challenge, and we got through the whole user story without too many issues. If you guys like, I can go ahead and share my screen and show you the feature. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, give me 1 second. Let me just get the right thing going here. Okay. Let me share this guy here. All right, as you can see at the moment, we have the app, and I am going to go ahead and create a new user here. And we have an empty shopping list. And I'm just going to go ahead and add some random items here. I'll say soon. For this one, I'll give it a purchase date. I'll add another one. So beer, kind of soon. I won't give it a purchase date. I'm just kind of randomizing the list. Let's say we want some chicken. Let's say soon. And finally, I'll add pineapple, and I'll say not soon. I'm gonna go ahead and submit this last guy here. And when I go to the list, what you'll see is a sorted list based on the purchase date with colors associated with it. So let's go here. As you can see, based on the next purchase date, we're seeing, green for soon, beer for kind of soon. I mean, yellow for kind of soon, and red for not soon. I know with the colors, we talk about accessibility and we don't really want to go in that route, but knowing that the CSS or the styling user story is kind of up next for the next 2 weeks, we can adjust that accordingly. There is an ARIA label attached to each of these. So if I click here, I can see that it does have that soon description there. And if I click here, this will also say kind of soon. And the last one will also say, or will say not soon on it. Now, we want to adjust the back end because we want to see if an item is inactive. So I'm going to just adjust a couple things in the back end just to make it inactive. So let me go ahead and just find out what my token is. Okay, move that far. I'll just turn on this tab real quick. Okay, so here is my collection of items. Sorry, my computer's slow. Let's change beer here. So we added a couple new fields here, such as like a date added, which is when the item was inserted into the collection. And also this inactive property. So what we're gonna do here now is from the date added here, I'm gonna say, we see that the estimated frequency is 14 days. So I'm gonna go ahead and just gonna scooch this back like from a while now. So let's say like July 1st. And the next purchase date, according to the estimated purchase date, should have been July 15th. So if I update that, so at this point, oh, sorry, July 15th. So at this point, it has passed the next purchase date. And if it's how the user story asked us to do it was if it's the estimated frequency times 2, if it's over that many days, then the item itself should be inactive. So this far exceeds at this point, this far exceeds 28 days. So if I refresh the page, it should become inactive. So let's go ahead and check that out. So as you see here, beer has become inactive and it is also on the bottom. And everything else is still sorted by the purchase date except the inactive item. And lastly, I forgot to mention, for items that have the same purchase date, they are also they are sorted by their item name. So as you can see, chicken and time, they are sorted alphabetically. But yeah, other than that, I believe that's essentially what we did for our user story.
Cool. Yeah, Yolanda, anything else to add on to that?
Nothing to add, but my experience was a tough one because it was dates. Sam has been very patient with me. And when we got stuck, the power of Rubber Ducky is like very strong. It helped us out like 2 times. We couldn't figure out how to sort the inactive by alphabetize. For some reason, it just wouldn't sort the way it sorted with the active field. And for the life of us, we couldn't figure it out. So I had to we were stuck on it for like over an hour or two. And then I had to ask my husband to come sit down in front of the computer, and Sam had to explain to him like the steps. And then we figure out why the problem is because of it was following the rules of the date of the inactive. That was before the way that it was sorted was first before alphabetizing it. And I just realized that, oh, it's doing exactly what we told it to do. So we didn't catch that until like the whole rubber ducky. And I think it helped us out like twice for this. So this was really a big challenge for me because of, like I said in the last story, that the dates really confuses me very easily. So that was very helpful. So I just wanted to put that input about that experience for me, at least.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, just explaining it out and just talking it out and speaking it to someone that has never seen the code allowed us to reinterpret the issue, and then easily kind of locate where the issue was stemming from. So, you know, that is a process in which I'm going to try to follow whenever I interact with like an issue that I can't get over. It definitely helped for sure.
Does everyone know what the phrase using a rubber duck or playing rubber duck is in that context? I've heard it before. Okay, then I won't. It's just one of those things that, like, when I first heard that, like, no one had explained it to me. Like, someone walked up, like, "Hey, I want to play rubber duck." And I'm like, "What are you saying?" And then they're like, "Yeah, actually, I want to talk this whole thing out and all that stuff." So anyway, cool, awesome. Again, I think that looks great. You guys are like, it's functional, doing everything we need. And yeah, dates are always hard. So, awesome. Cool. So, I can't remember now if it was April or Graham who's doing the retro part next.
April is. I missed it
April is.
earlier. I thought you were referring to the retro. That's all me.
Dude,
So please, April, take it away.
again, I was in the car like all day today, so it's entirely possible.
Right. Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Graham, for getting the list together, because I was like, what am I doing this week? And that list actually really helped. So, and I wrote, some of this might just be a duplicate, things we've already walked through and talked through. But first of all, I feel like I did hear a couple of shout outs in the demos. Does anyone have a first, want to give a shout out to someone else?
Yeah, to Danny for having the idea to restructure our database. That made our life a lot easier this past week.
I want to give
Thank you.
a shout out to Yolanda because I knew that she already communicated to me that this was going to be a challenge for her, but like she really, rolled with me and was like an expert navigator, and having the idea to have her husband come through and let us rubber ducky with him. That was like such an awesome practice, and it just opened up my mind so much, and it really helped us to actually get over the problem. So thank you, Yolanda, for that.
Danny and Sam, you both explicitly mentioned this, but I'm going to credit the whole team with remembering accessibility stuff, including ARIA labels and things. Again, easy to brush it off and forget. Appreciate that.
Cool. Yolanda, I haven't heard anything from you. You have any shout outs this week?
Just with Sam, he's been very patient with me. This was a huge challenge. And I feel like I've repeated myself over and over asking the same question because it just would not, I couldn't comprehend it when we're trying to manipulate the date and trying to cause the effect of the inactivity of an item. So I'm just very grateful that he didn't get frustrated with me or, just, I bet he wanted to flip the table, but he didn't show any of that. So I'm just like super grateful because I'm at the point I was like feeling so guilty because it was really hard for me to like kind of like understand that. And just his patience it made me feel like, okay, I got this, don't panic. we'll get through this. And in the end, surprisingly, or I shouldn't say surprisingly, we got it. We finished the story. So I was like, that's my shout out for this week. It's just for his patience. So I really appreciate that.
Mhm. Awesome. Okay, who are we missing? Danny, did you have one?
I mean, I always have a lot for especially Sam. Even on the weeks that I'm not pairing with him, I feel like he goes 110% every single week. And like I can see that from the outside too. Like he just dives straight in, like no questions, like let's just figure it out. He's super resilient when things like are going wonky. So yeah, huge shout out to Sam for that.
Awesome. Okay, that's great. If you guys think of any more shout outs, obviously we can go back and add them because they're important. And how do you guys feel about goals this week? Do we reach them? Yeah, is that pretty good? Okay, cool. Like, what do you feel like was the biggest way? It sounds like, because I'm getting, and I don't want to put words in, but like Yolanda, it seemed like for you getting past this problem and seeing how to get past it without having, like, with having a supportive team member made it work. Like, do you feel like you are a better programmer than say last week because of that? I mean, because we're constantly improving, right? Like that,
I mean, yeah, I wouldn't call it better, but just a smidge, I'm
Right.
going in the right direction.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yes.
So like, I probably am still confused with the date time, but now like with especially understanding how sort works, I thought I
Mhm.
knew, but then I never messed with it when dealing with dates. I've only played it with it, just as a tutorial or something, and or a
Mm.
code war, and that deals with just a string of letters. It's not like string of letters and a date, which like threw me off in a loop. So just understanding how to manipulate that was now I kind of have that in my extra toolbox, if that makes any sense.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely it does. And I mean, you'll come back to this a few months from now and you'll be like, aha, that was the moment, because the thing is that all the people in this room, I mean, you're all capable of getting past that problem. It's just how, it's figuring out the how. And a lot of times it comes down to teammates. Like, I know I do this where I get stuck sometimes trying to figure something out by myself. Like, oh, why can't I? But yeah, doing the rubber ducky, doing whatever you can to sometimes just get up and go talk to someone about it. And then the answer sometimes is, as soon as you start talking about it, you're like, oh, it's right there. It was right there. You just needed to like let your brain up, like loosen up a little bit. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I think on that, April, I just wanted to say that I think for me personally, I know I'm really bad at like taking breaks when I hit that wall.
Mhm.
And I don't know if anyone else struggles with this too, but I just feel like I'm just like grinding and grinding and grinding against a wall and like you're not making any progress. So I think like rubber ducky or like standing up and taking a walk for 10 minutes, like sometimes all of a sudden it's like, oh, there it is. Cause now that I'm moving my body, my brain's not like freaking out. But I just wanted to say like rubber duck, I'm glad that you all did that because I think that's a great way to get out of your like rut.
Absolutely.
Not enough caffeine sometimes.
Caffeine, snacks, blood sugar is a real thing,
Or too much caffeine.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's probably what happens more times actually.
Oh man. Yeah. Stay hydrated, everybody. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, go for it.
I just wanted to say it was very interesting because I've heard of the term rubber ducky, but I when Sam and I worked on it, I thought we were kind of rubber ducking because we were talking out loud with the issue, but we keep getting stuck. And kind of like what Danny was saying, like we're so close, we're almost there, we're going to keep grinding, and for me, like after an hour or two, I was like, okay, I'm really tired. Like we got to do something. And then I was like, okay, let's just ask my husband, he'll sit down and we just like start from zero and explain it to him. And that's when I realized, oh, wow. Yeah, the code is doing what we're telling it to do after that deeper explanation, which was weird for me because Sam and I, we've been talking about it. We talked about our story. We talked about the issue. and the problem. And we're like, okay, well, we did this, we asked questions about each other, but my mind, I thought that was part of rubber ducking until we brought in a third person who didn't know anything about the code. And we can't just dive in and explain it. We have to kind of set up the stepping stones of our story. And because of that, we're like, oh, it's really literally right in front of us. So I just want to put that in there. I thought I was rubber ducking with Sam, but in actuality, we were co-working, and with my husband, that was like the pure power of that rubber ducky.
Yeah, like sometimes you can get stuck even with somebody else. You're stuck in the same spot because you've explained it to each other, and this sometimes it's not like you're using something fresh. But yeah, starting over is awesome. That's great. It's a great reminder. Okay.
Jump in for 1 second.
Yeah, go for it, Graham.
I just wanted to say I like rubber ducking a lot, but the way that I always think about it is you always have to explain it from first principles. It's not a matter of, hey, we're going to work on this problem together. We have to start and look at the basics and build it back up like you're talking to your husband or talking to a layman, explaining from first principles what this thing is trying to do and why.
Awesome. Okay. So the next question is, how do you feel coming out of this? Well, it says cycle, but I guess it's the week. We just had a retro. What was it, like earlier in the week or last week? Was it 2 weeks ago? Time is
technically 1.5 because I missed the meeting, but
oh, that's right. That's fine. That's fine. Okay. So Danny, you're at the top of this list. How do you feel? How's it going?
I feel good. I feel like each week has gotten more comfortable for me. Like I'm less nervous going into a pairing session, and that's been really great. I think particularly this week, Tatiana, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I felt like our ask was pretty easy. And so we were kind of like, are we sure did we cover everything we need to cover? And we're like, well, let's just add a welcome screen because we need to do something else. So some of those little things that like this week was super, super smooth. And the week before was like really smooth. I think we're all starting to get each other's like working patterns, and we're all be able to groove a little bit more than the first couple weeks. So yeah, I feel great going into the little bit more self-directed work the next couple of weeks where we got to figure out what we want to do.
Cool. Thank you. Sam, you're next.
Yeah, I feel great. I feel similarly to what Danny has said, and that over the course of the past 2 months now, we've gotten to really know each other and learn our work styles and be able to really conquer the user stories, and have been having a more, I would say, efficient process and going into it. Obviously, like I said, this past week it's been a challenge, but even though it was a challenge, we had the resources and the structure in which we work to get through it. Working with Yolanda was really nice, and just being able to have that driver and navigator dynamic already set was it provides just an efficient way of getting through these issues. I think moving forward, it's going to be interesting, and I'm almost kind of nervous about it because all the user stories have been so explicit about what we need to accomplish, with the user story next being make this a professional looking app. I'm like, oh crap, what are the steps? We're going to have to list our own steps now. And I'm also kind of nervous because my design skills aren't very good, so it should be interesting, but I'm also very excited for it. This is just another thing, another challenge, another opportunity to grow. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Sorry, my my typing is just slightly there's a lag. Okay,
Sorry,
great. No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm like, okay, shake it out. No, it's great. I mean, we have a recording, so I can always just copy it from a transcript or something too if I need to. Tatiana, you're next.
Yeah, I'm really excited because we're done with all of the official asks, and now the design part, we can do everything that over these past weeks, we've said, oh, it would be cool if it had this, or it would be good if it had that. So we can all do that now and just like put finishing touches on the app. But
Mhm.
it works. It's finally at the point where it actually works.
That's exciting. Yeah, I'm really happy for you guys. This is my favorite part, is the design part. Even though I really like, honestly, my favorite is getting a design from a professional designer, and then, and then just making it look pretty where it seems like that's the part that people or customers, or like when you're working with a team and like everyone's like, ooh,
That's all they see, right? Like they don't see
Yeah.
anything that you've done to
Right.
get
They
to this
don't,
point. They just see this pretty picture.
like, you're all going to know that Danny made that choice a few weeks ago to change the database structure. And that's really what made this thing kind of rock right now. But I mean, along with everything else, but the design, everyone's like, oh, I can click this button and now it does the thing. And so yeah, super exciting. Okay. Do you have anything else? That's it? Okay. Yolanda, you're up. How you feel?
Good. Better than day one. Less nervous, less anxious. I just had an aha moment. I went to like Collab Labs like 2-year celebration earlier today. And then I realized I should have taken notes of my journey, of all the hurdles I've overcame while working on the stories. I was more focused on finishing the stories than I did on like, oh yeah, we take notes of what we accomplished and like how we did it. And I wish I'd done that, because then I could have talked about it during like a job interview. Because now I have to try and refresh my memory of like, all right, so Tatiana and I, we got stuck on this. Oh yeah, and I think we did that. Or Danny and I, we did this because of that. But all the details are becoming fuzzy because I didn't take that detail note. So I feel like I should have done a better documentation of my journey, but better starting now than later. And what best way to start about than talking about date and time? So,
Right.
but other than that, I've been doing good and getting much more comfortable being, in this team and really enjoying the process a lot.
Sorry, we record all of these meetings, right? So we can go back and look at all these meetings and reference some of the things that we were talking about, correct?
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. So you can go back and maybe that will jolt some knowledge, or even the pull requests too that you've made. And as you go through the code, you'll probably have that like, oh, and you might see stuff looking through that code, like as you did it incrementally, of like what you may do now and how that would be different. And that's another thing to kind of keep track on, because as your brain is expanding, you're like, oh yeah, I would totally do that different now. And maybe this is a little simpler, or maybe you'll learn some new cool concepts that you want to like apply. Okay. So the next section is what worked well. Yeah, I guess we'd start. We'll just do it around again, with Danny at the top.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that we're all learning each other's styles a little bit more. And I think our communication within the pairs, at least from my perspective, has gotten better. I know early on, I felt like I was very shy to like speak up or to like maybe I would voice ideas, but I wasn't comfortable driving early on, things like that. So I feel like the last few weeks we've all gelled in a really good way that I think that communication has just gotten more comfortable and smarter. And I'm sorry, my dogs are barking. They're playing right now, so
I agree.
Yeah, you're like, yes.
yeah, they're a lot. And then I think like looking at all of our user stories, and I can now recognize this with what Sam was saying about how we don't really know what to do next. I have to say that like the communication of how those cards were laid out was really great. And it made our jobs really easy as developers to be like, okay, cool. I know what's expected. I know what we need to do. So I'm kind of looking at that as a North Star for how we structure ourselves the next couple weeks. So I just want to call out that works well, and we should like capitalize on that knowledge.
Mhm.
I guess I'm next.
Yes.
Okay. You know, it's kind of a, I don't know if I would say ironic answer, but I think like what worked well was between Yolanda and I just like getting through an issue, you know, like I think we did that pretty well. You know, like it was personally for me, like throughout these weeks, like probably the hardest challenge for me when she was talking about like the sorting issue that we
Mhm.
got that we were running into. Like it was frustrating, but at the same time, like I felt like we did the proper stats of like, you know, her and I like cooking and trying to figure it out on our own, you know, taking a break when we needed to take a break. And then also when we still weren't able to really find out, like using that rubber ducky technique, like that, we didn't even explicitly say like, let's do this, you know, like we were gonna actually have her husband come over and just literally try to help us.
Mm.
But just in the process of like literally just like talking it out from square one and actually just naturally falling into this rubber ducky technique, you know, we were able to figure it out that way. And I think that process was pretty fluid and pretty efficient, and could have been way worse, honestly. I feel like in a different situation, but I think we really got through it in a quote unquote proper fashion. And yeah, I think that did really work quite well this week for us.
Great. Okay, Tatiana.
So I'm not going to repeat myself about the whole database
Yeah,
situation.
That's fine.
But what I've noticed as I'm going through every user story every week, I've realized that I'm now thinking more about what is the other pair doing and what components are they working in. How can I make sure that we don't have merge conflicts? How can I make sure that like we don't double up on the same work on the same stuff or whatever, which is something that I wasn't necessarily doing in the first couple of weeks. So I guess that's progress.
Yeah, absolutely. One moment. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Okay, Yolanda.
What worked for me, kind of similar to what Sam said, the rubber ducky really saved our butts this week. But for me personally is not feeling guilty to ask the same questions over and over. I have the tendency of saying, oh yeah, okay, to say I get it, because I feel bad because I'm not getting it, you know? And so I was comfortable enough, you know, with this team and with Sam to say, I'm so sorry, Sam, like, can you explain that to me again? Because I'm just not getting it. And, you know, after like 3 or 4 times, it had a good turnout because I wanted to really learn the problem instead of, or, you know, as Sam is explaining it, instead of the default answer for me is to always say, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. You know, it's more like, I'm sorry, Sam, I don't get it. Why do we need this extra field? Or why do we need that in some extra question? So that was progress for me.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, next section is what could be improved.
And I'm gonna chime in real quick. We were at 150
Right.
Portland time, just time check.
We could do what could be improved and then anything else you want to bring up, you know, and just kind of couple those together, just kind of final thoughts through here if you've got anything, and then we'll go on to issues. So Danny, and if you don't have anything, that's also fine. If you're
I'm
like
trying to
nothing.
think. There's nothing like big on my mind. I'm sure that we're gonna face challenges in kind of like crafting what we want this final result to look like. So I'm just really excited to see how we communicate through kind of our own design choices and what we do as a team. Because I just don't know how that's going to go yet, but nothing from the last couple of weeks that I can think of.
Okay, cool. Sam?
Anything to improve? At this point, not so much. I think, if we were going to hit more user stories, if there were, I think like the best thing that we could improve is like thinking further into the future and like thinking about like, oh, what fields does our backend need? Because that's something that I noticed when I first hit this user story. It was like, oh, like, when we add an item, like, there should be this field, like a date added field, so that we can reference that if we don't have an actual purchase date, But ultimately it was, that's something that's like easily fixed, but it could be something that I think we could implement or think about just so we don't have to necessarily backtrack. But obviously moving forward, we don't have too much of that at this point, but I think that's something that I'll have to think about just like moving forward into like personal projects and just like into working with people. Any little last thing I would say, like I would also say, on a really positive note, like when I first started all of this, like and saw these user stories and like read the users, I kind of thought like, oh man, like how am I going to do this? Like this is going to be a challenge. Like I was kind of nervous, and I think other people have communicated that like, oh, and some of this stuff makes me nervous. But now that we're here, it's just really awesome knowing that we got through all of it. And even though there were challenging, like we got through it and we improved and went through all that. So moving into other challenges later in my life, like I'm gonna kind of have that in my mind that like, yeah, it might be daunting now, but you're gonna get through it ultimately step by step. So yeah.
Awesome, that's great. Okay, Tatiana.
Nothing to improve, but I agree with Sam that like breaking up the problem into smaller chunks and like, tackling them one by one makes the whole problem a lot simpler. Like don't think about I keep the end goal in mind, sure, but don't think how you're gonna get from A to Z. Just think how you're gonna get from A to B first.
Yes. That's great. Okay, Yolanda.
I can't think of anything to improve at the moment, but just highlighting what Sam and Tatiana is saying, it's really nice that it is in smaller chunks, and for me to know that, okay, I need to just focus on the acceptance criteria, because there's when Sam and I had our story, I was like, oh, my husband is colorblind, we got to figure out another way. But then I had to stop myself, like, okay, that's not part of the criteria for this story. Let's just keep it with the colors for now. As long as it's working, then we'll continue that discussion at another one. So that helped me keep in check, and I thought that was good. But for improvement, I can't really think of anything. Kind of probably agree with Sam with the database, the structure. We really benefited when Danny, just kind of switched it up to find things by user token, not the item. But then again, I wouldn't know back then what I know now. So I can't really say much for that as an improvement.
Right.
So yeah.
Right. That's awesome. And I did want to point out for that too, sometimes it's really hard to know all the things that are going to go into your database in the beginning. So, and you may put things in that later you're like, the requirements may change. I mean, obviously this is a pretty static project. It's been defined over a couple of years. But sometimes things are more, they're definitely, more volatile, or you never know what you're going to want from like a user input that's going to come up as a new feature. And it's just giving you like database flexibility that can be great as a thing to think of. And also, Yolanda, when you think about these things like the color blindness and the accessibility, make that as, those are great notes, and that's great feedback to bring back to a team when you're going through a product or project and they're reading out the acceptance criteria, is to ask those questions. you know, and to be like, well, what about this? What about this? And it might just be a separate ticket or something, you know, that the product owner is like, we're not going to worry about that right now. Or they're like, oh, you know, and that happens a lot. It happens a lot where they're like, we just didn't think about that. And so, you know, bringing that up can make product better. And we're done. Well,
I had
except
one
we get,
thing because I was
Yeah.
sparked by something you just said, April,
yeah, go
about
for it.
the database flexibility, and that I just realized like how nice it is to work within Firestore in the way that like we don't have to define schemas and update everything. If we change something to play around, it just saves to the database and we can nuke it if we need to. But it's been really nice to be like, I don't have to define this schema. I can see what happens when I push it to the database and like make sure that everything's functioning correctly. And that's been actually pretty cool. But I do think it has meant that maybe we're a little less intentional about those fields because they don't matter as much. Like we're not really defining them in the code as such. So I don't know, I guess good and bad, but it's really, I like the flexibility of it.
Okay, that's great. Graham, you want to take it over?
Sure. All right. So I've got 4 minutes. This is great. I can do this. All right. So
We started late and say it's not entirely fair to try and cram that in. So,
well, okay. So in the Zoom chat here, I just tossed in our last issue. So this really is kind of a big issue, and it's not really meant to be solved by one team in 1 week, because really it's saying, hey, as a user, I want our app to look professional and welcoming. And so there's lots of sort of kind of ways in which we can break down this issue and ways in which we can tackle it and things we can do to try to address it. Overall, this should be closed once we feel that the app is professional and welcoming. So kind of, I was thinking you could break this down in a couple ways, but of course this is going to be up to you. The goal is that first we have to define what does it mean, in your opinions, to look professional and look welcoming, and then actually try to put that into stories. So for instance, saying, hey, I think it'll look more professional if it has, you know, a cohesive color scheme. And so I'd be saying, as a user, I want to have a cohesive color scheme so the app looks nicer on my eyes or something like that, right? As you can kind of go through and make those stories. Or maybe saying, I want to be able to update the CSS and I want to use Bootstrap and all these other things, right? So you've got options of what you want this to look like. That issue itself has a very nice breakdown of a suggested process you can go through. But my suggestion to you is that for the first couple days, perhaps start thinking of how you want to break this down. You do have 2 weeks. So if you have an initial thing you want to grab, go for it, and plan that out and grab a partner and hop on that. But really first, try to decompose the issue. Say, here are the things that we think would make this application look welcoming and look professional, and then do it. I'll be around for code reviews this week and someone else next week as well. So we do have some time to do all this and time to work with us and get feedback, not just on the code itself, but also on the issues. It might be beneficial to have help in saying, hey, this is too big of a scope, or this is really too small, right? There's always a really nice balance to be struck there. Yeah, so those are kind of the issues. You guys have pairs. I forget what the newest ones are. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that it's listed somewhere where we all can find it and make it really easy. I wasn't able to find that list, unfortunately. But yeah, so how are you? Yes, Lyle, I see your fingers raised.
I was in the wrong GitHub project a second ago, so hold on, I'm navigating to the right one. But it is so just saying, last time I was in this one, the team decided to, you know, add cards to the board and then work them through and that kind of thing, which I thought was a decent way to communicate that. I don't think it's necessary. So if you decide, you know, there's a different way you want to go about doing it, you know what I mean? I think starting in Slack and sort of having that type of conversation is a good one. I also know that we're going to have people kind of in and out over the next couple of weeks as well, in terms of, you know, who's going to be around. So like for the next sync in particular, but just to kind of in general. So I think we're probably going to lean heavily on Slack for getting stuff done. And then probably having it maybe a card or at least something along those lines that does kind of give you a thing to point and look at, right? Regardless, will kind of help know what you're going to do, and B, help communicate that to the other pair, because as we kind of mentioned, I think Tatiana were saying that earlier, like you are kind of worried about what the other people are doing, so you don't step on and blow up each other and it all kinds of looks the same. And yeah, like probably makes sense to do more thinking about it than and talking about it before just diving in and coding. Anyway, sorry, I did find it. So it's the project brief while I was rambling. So I dropped that in there. And then looks like the pairs are Danny and Sam and Tatiana and Yolanda on the thing.
Gorgeous. Well, one other suggestion I'll make too is that we've got a full 2 weeks to do this. We also only have 2 weeks to do this. So if I were you guys, I would also set firm mini milestones as we go through. So, 2 weeks is a lot of time, but it's also not very much time. So what do you want to get done in the first little bit? What do you want to get done in the first week? Add a little bit of cushion at the end, make sure that there's enough time to kind of fit it all in. Yeah. So I'd say first, go for it, April.
I was going to say, yeah, if you are looking at the like bootstrap or something like that, we're probably going to want that in and merge so both teams can have it, something like that, because then you can both kind of use that structure, whatever you decide. So maybe, yeah, the first couple of days is just kind of figuring it out, like what you want these choices to be, and kind of agree as a whole team before you start implementing. And I'm going to be out after Wednesday this week. So I'll probably have the office hours fairly early in the week, and we can use that time to maybe like Wednesday or whatever to kind of break up what we think the tickets are and just kind of refine them as a team. I think that might be a good use of our time. Okay, yeah, go for it.
I was gonna say the last final thing I wanted to say is that you guys are driving this. We're not driving this. So at the end of the day, this is your project, your app. So you are the product owners, and you get to figure out what you want this to look like. So it is up to you guys to take the initiative and say, this is what I want to have happen. This is what I want it to look like. And then break that down and say, this is how we're going to get there. Is us taking the reins off a little bit and saying, go at it.
Be free. Yeah, and if you come across some good like design things, like design, there's great, I'm trying to think of like Dribble or something like that, where there's like good places where people have like made designs of things that you can kind of like look at and just get your brain kind of like, thinking in the design sense. It's a little different than being in the program sense of like, oh, these colors really go together, or like a theme generator or something like that can make it really nice. And just so you're not just sitting there spending all your time like trying to color pick something and get it perfect. You can always make those adjustments later after you take like the big pieces and break those down and then do the refinements the last week. All right.
Yeah, I love the suggestion in the ticket about a mood board. Just be careful. It's easy to spend days making a mood board. They're really fun and really neat and a great inspirational tool, but they also could be a great time waster if you're not careful.
The famous death words of a developer, the thing that leads you into a trap, is always, that'll take 2 weeks.
Yeah, think about it in the, you work 5 hours a week, right? So we have 10 hours per person, just that means just working on it an hour a day or something, or maybe not even that much, like a half an hour or something. And try to think of it in terms of like what you could do if you only had a half hour a day to work on this.
I'm going to be annoying and say, remember that the process of TCL is less about the final product, more about working with each other. So half of the value of this cycle is going to be working with each other, planning things out, checking in on things, how they go, and all that stuff.
Awesome. I'll probably try to send out some links today and some an idea for office hours and then we'll be ready to go. Okay, cool. I look forward to seeing what happens, guys. This is so exciting.
And already I feel pretty good about what y'all are going to do based on the good work that you've done so far, and the relative like ease and aptitude that you all have shown in building a thing and working together and making it go. We had a little, we just were chatting amongst the mentors of us, and we're like, yeah, this group just like they talks really well and they get along. Like, it's really weird. Like, oh, it's not weird. You guys are just doing awesome.
Spoiled.
Indeed, we are. All right. I'm going to put some of these little pieces of advice into our Slack channel, but beyond that, I don't really have anything else. There's no wireframes. There's no technical documents. There's nothing for me to show beyond saying, hey, your partners are, and have at it. All right.
Oh, my dogs are barking.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
So,
Bye.
Have a good one.